Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. Good evening, AJ. Nice to have you on the stream. And I clicked through the disclaimer. Nevertheless, let me repeat it for you. We are talking about playing a computer game. We try to understand the concepts that are involved in running trains as thoroughly as possible, but nevertheless, we are just playing a computer game. Leave the real trains and the real train installations and railway installations alone. Dobry wieczór, CD Radar. Donau-Marina Österreichische Gewerkschaftsbund. What the hell is that supposed to tell me? Is that the company that you are working for now? No, I watched your video about that ride on Prague Metro, and I guess the train was the new Siemens train, not the old Soviet one that you talked about. Was impressive. Also, the other page that you linked me, really great. What I wanted to do today, by the way, is to go back to the great Niddertalbahn. What is, I think it is safe to say, the best DLC that was released this year, and maybe I don't get it. The Donau-Maria Österreichische Gewerkschaftsbund. Yeah, about that metro. You did not get it. I said I think it was the new Siemens train that was in the video, not the old Soviet train. You talked about those two trains that you have there a couple of weeks ago, and I saw that there are a lot of computer screens in your vehicle, and I don't think that this is an old train then. It was impressive. It always puzzles me how the metro drivers can actually get there in so short a time from one station to the other. That really was from old Soviet train, but all of them are modernized by Škoda Transportation. I see. So they have new stuff in the cabs, and the little that you see is new, modernized by Škoda. Yeah, interesting. But back to today's topic, it is Niddertalbahn, and actually I decided to make this video because Alistair Lynn left a really great comment on the video that we did 2 weeks ago, and this inspired me to look into it a bit more about the Sperrfahrten, about how you are allowed and when you are allowed to pass a red signal, and how it was back in the 19s. And CD Raider says, I have a video from Siemens if you want to see it. Is it on your YouTube? Because I subscribed to your channel, if that is your channel at all, and yeah, I want to see it. It's always interesting if you actually see a bit of the controls and the screens when you have those cab view rides. Well, I guess that this is a bit complicated and needs to be cleared with the company as soon as you see what the driver is actually doing in the videos. To the trains, choose a route, Niddertal, and we are actually doing the same scenario again, but with more elucidation about what actually is happening, or would or should happening in a situation of that kind. So we're back on our Baureihe 365, the V60. And yeah, also the thing about the transmission in the V60, I have some news on that. Back on our nice V60, let's switch on the SIFA, the main switch, and the Indusi, also known as PZB. let's stay on topic of the stream. Yeah, exactly. Let's stay on topic of the stream. I will also switch the switch so that we do not derail when we're setting back to pick up the locomotives. The cars. We have talked about mechanical transmissions last week in the video about the British Rail Class 101. You can see here a mechanical gear lever that is an additional mechanical gear after our hydraulic gear or transmission that we have on the V60. And I think I will do 2 videos about hydraulic transmission starting next Sunday. Yes, let's discuss everything that is related with the Metro on Discord then. Alright, we can couple up, not using the yellow shunting coupling because we want to go out on the open track. We use the screw couplings that are in the locomotive as well. Alright, so you just saw the Sperrsignal, the blocking signal, turn from SH0 to SH1, allowing us to go out into the open. And since we are going out into the open, we must have a permission to go as a train service, not a mere shunting service, but a full-blown train service with a timetable. Oh, so much for that. I should have set the switch. Otherwise we just stay in here forever. I think you would really like our LZA safety system. I think this is one of the best train safety systems. Oh yeah. Maybe I should focus on driving my train a bit. You could see that the transmission went into idling. Well, I should never try to do 2 things at the same time, since I am a mere man and not capable of multitasking that. So, let's set back our train properly, so that we can set the switch and then actually leave this station here. And as soon as we're out, then I might talk about the difference between shunting services and train services. As long as we are just shunting around, we don't necessarily need to have a timetable. We just need the permission of... well, that was just not enough. We just need the permission of the person in charge for the yard that we're shunting in. But as soon as we're going out on the open track, then we are a train service, or we need to be a train service at this point. And then we need to have a train signal, the 3 lights at the front of our locomotive, like 1, 2, 3 lights, and we need an end signal so that everybody can see that what end is the front end and what end is the rear end. And then we have a number and a timetable, and then we have permission to go out on the track. So when we're just reversing the locomotive here a bit and couple up to our wagons and shunting back and forth, then we are just a shunting service. We don't need a special permit, track warrant, or whatever you might call it. But since we are supposed to go from one station to the other, we should be a train service now, even though we are a freight train. And even though we are just a shunting locomotive, doesn't matter. And now this word about the transmission that I wanted to talk to add. Last or 2 weeks ago, I thought that we have traction problems when we're actually applying too much throttle when running out here, because at a certain point the engine is revving down like this. We're losing rotations per minute, but we're not actually losing speed. It is going on, and because this is happening at least twice, like now again, I thought this has something to do with us losing traction, the contact between the wheels and the rails. But actually it is the switching of the different gears in the hydrokinetic transmission that we can witness here. And I was confused because I read that the V60 uses a hydrokinetic transmission with only 2 gears, one torque converter and one fluid coupling. But this is, from what I've read now, only true for the newer versions of the V60. The older versions of the V60 actually had a hydrokinetic transmission with 3 gears. And so probably we have one of these older versions here. And so you have 2 times the switching. So you can just accelerate through this point. Well, they obviously thought that there are some benefits from going down from a 3-gear transmission to a 2-gear transmission. And from what I have read, they hoped that it is getting more economical to run this locomotive, that it needs less fuel. What I think you can read that on Wikipedia actually. What did not turn out to be true, but nevertheless the just one switching point proved convenient in the shunting services, so it wasn't all in vain. But our locomotive here is probably still using the L311 something transmission. And so we are not confused that we have actually 2 switch points when accelerating. And to repeat that once more, I'm planning on doing 2 videos about the hydrokinetic transmission and how that works actually. Starting next Sunday. This is similar to ICE 4 trains having a lower max speed than ICE 3. Says CD radar and no tree. Good. Yeah, exactly. This is the point where you can run into the tree when you're doing the scenario with the tree hugger scenario. We can just pause. This is one of the stations here that has those Gruppenausfahrsignale. There's only one signal behind the switch that covers both lanes or both lines in the station. We have a video about those. I think it's from 2 or 3 weeks ago. If you're interested how they work. Here, you can see one signal after the switch governing both lines. 3.4 kilometers, and then we are supposed to stop at Heldenbergen-Windecken at the red signal. Most probably. At least this is how the scenario usually goes. And I don't think it will be different today. So let's hope that this week we are not having thunderstorms again, so that the dogs are all right. And we can just go through with this. Yeah. And then at Heldenbergen-Windecken we will have a look at the different possibilities, how we can actually pass a red signal with authority. And when we get to the point where we are supposed to shunt around, then we can have a look at this new thingy that Alistair Lynn got me to look into, and that in the 90s, and we are in 1992 in this DLC here, there was actually some special ruling for red lights that got changed since then. Just checking that my PZB stuff is active. And I thought this might be actually an interesting point to look into, because on this scenario we are switching a couple of times from being just a shunting service to being a train service to being a train service that is a Sperrfahrt, to being a shunting service, and then to being a train service again. So that it makes at least a bit of sense. The moment we are train service, running our Sugar Beets along the open track from one station to the other. And one fact about train services is that they usually start at one station and end at a different station. And not somewhere on the open track. VR2 signal announcing a reduction in speed limit to 40. Ronnie, I don't know. He has not said anything so far on the chat. AJ, welcome back. No, I mean... Ah, you mean... Hank. Yeah, we should take Hank with us. We're not doing all the shunting without Hank. If we have him not on board yet, then we will get him at Heldenbergen-Windecken. Maybe he's the person actually who takes the written order to us. In front of us there is the HP2 signal. From there on we need to be below the 40, and at the same time there's an VR0 announcing a red signal at the next main. It's always a great ramp here. So even though we have to slow down, we have to apply quite a lot of throttle to not get too slow. So, and here is the station. You could see the switch indicator for the double slip switch just passing by. We have a video about the switch indicators as well. And there is our red signal that we're approaching now. And now dispatch is telling us we have been informed that one on the line ahead, a 628, has broken down. We have been asked to approach it and push it into the next station. Alright. The next objective marker is couple to formation, 2 vehicles in 2.1 kilometers. Okay. But the signal in front of us is red with 2 red lamps. And today we will have a look at why there are actually 2 red lamps on this signal, not just 1. Okay. We're stopping here at this red signal. We're contacting our signaler. Signal says, okay, proceed at restricted speed, but he does not switch the signal to a different aspect. It is still showing 2 red lamps. It does not light up any of those additional lights that are at the signal. We can see it has a white, red, white mast sign. And the question is, dispatch is sending us along past the red signal. Are we actually allowed to do this, or are we not? And we are not. Let's discuss this a bit more in depth. When and under what circumstances are we allowed to pass a signal that is showing a red aspect? And I will come back to this. What actually has changed between 1992 and nowadays? But for a signal of that kind showing 2 red lamps, it is still the same. So we do not need to go back to the history of the red signals, but just have a look. I'm talking about light signals that always have this mast sign, white over red over white. Vast majority of our main signals has a mast sign of that kind. There are different mast signs that actually allow a bit of a different behavior, but I will look into this and explain more about this as soon as we have signals of that kind in the game. What I'm telling you today and what I'm discussing today is always about light signals that have this kind of mast sign. So In modern days, 2 lights, 1 red light, or the little dwarven one with a miniature version of this mast sign on the floor or on a stick, and also the semaphore light with a red if you encounter them nowadays. The horizontal blade. All those signals are the HP0 signals according to nowadays signal book. And as long as those signals have a mast sign of that kind as a light signal, yeah, semaphore signals, by the way, they have this mast that is painted in white, red, white, and I did not say that particularly, but if you read it in the nowadays signaling book, you can see that there is stated specifically that on semaphore signals, this white, red, or white painting of the mast is just for better visibility. It does not bear any information, not the information that is given with the mast sign. So semaphore signals actually do not have those mast signs. Those mast signs are only fixed to light signals. Okay. What is necessary to pass a signal of that kind nowadays? And in the 90s it was with the 2 red lamps the same. We need this HP00. We will come back to this when we will be talking about how it was in the 90s. We can only pass it with a written order. We need our schriftliche Befehl. Otherwise we cannot pass it. So our normal movement authority, our Fahrplan, our Abfahrauftrag, whatever, is not enough. We need a specific written order that we can pass this signal. And I wanted to show you what it looks like, an order of that kind. Unfortunately, I have not been able to turn that around by 90 degrees. This is the 408, the Fahrdienstvorschrift, and this is the form that the dispatcher would use. You can see it here, orders 1 to 14, and orders 1, 2 and 3, they deal with Sie dürfen weiterfahren. Sie dürfen aus dem Bahnhof ausfahren. Sie dürfen in den Bahnhof einfahren. You may pass a signal. You may exit the station. You may enter the station at a certain signal, and then they can give you additional orders. And a written order of that kind is necessary, so you are allowed to pass a red signal of that kind. And then, typically, when you are ordered to pass a red signal of that kind, you're still a train service, but then you are a special train service, a train service that is allowed into blocked track, to enter track that is blocked. And there is not really a good word to translate Sperrfahrt, the German word Sperrfahrt, into English. I have tried to translate it with a service, a train service that is allowed to go into a track that is typically blocked by a red signal. And you can find it here in the Fahrdienstvorschrift. Some interesting requirements for when it is actually allowed for the dispatchers to send a train into a blocked track, and then especially maximum speeds that the Sperrfahrt, the service, can only go. So if you are a pulled Sperrfahrt, like we are at the moment, we're pulling our cars around, then we are notwithstanding any other limit, limited to 50 kilometers maximum. We cannot go under no circumstances faster than those 50 kilometers. And if we push cars around as a Sperrfahrt, then we are limited to 30. If this is happening on a piece of track where we have level crossings that are not technically secured, what is the case on most parts of the track in the Niddertalbahn, then we are actually limited to 20 when we are pushing cars around. So obviously this is the thing with the locomotive at the end of the train or in the middle, and then you need to be extra careful to be able to stop in front of a level crossing if some motorist tries to cross the railway at this point, so that nothing happens here. So when we in our scenario will couple up to the broken down DMU, then we will be pushing it around, so we will be limited to 30. And because I think there are technically not secured level crossings on this piece of track, then we would be also slowed down to 20, so we cannot go faster than 20 with this weird formation with the 628 at the front end of our train. And this because we are a Sperrfahrt train service that is allowed into the blocked track. And until we get to the point where the broken down train is, the dispatcher would give us in this order particular instructions how fast we can go until we get there. If we need to drive on site for the whole stretch of track, or if we can actually go a bit faster until we get there, and at what point we have to slow down. But those limits here, they come directly from the directive. They don't need to be ordered specifically. If we are a Sperrfahrt, then we are limited to 50. If we are pushing cars, to 30. If this happens on a piece of track that has level crossings that are not technically secured, then we are limited to 20 while pushing cars about. And well, yeah, that is what is happening in our scenario. What are the other lines for? There are some signals that actually modify this here, and I'm not talking about the mast signs that are modifying this procedure here, but we are talking about main signals that have this mast sign as a light signal, but additional signals that actually remove this strict requirement of a written order. For example, same signals here again, HP0 signals, and they have this additional sign. It is called an M board, what is quite obvious because there is an M, and it is in this script font written there in a red M on white ground with a red border again, and this is called a ZS12, an M board, M-Tafel, and this changes the requirement of a written order to a verbal order. So it is actually okay that the dispatcher tells you on the telephone or wherever that you can pass this. This is the most ugly M that I have ever seen. It is probably more ugly here on my presentation than it is in real life, but AJ says, I think this is my favorite sign, the M board, and CD Radar says this is the most ugly M that I've ever seen. Well, I tried to pick a font that comes close to this M. You can look it up in the Directive 301. It is actually maybe not that ugly, but it looks quite close. And yeah, I have seen them in real life when I was in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, traveling from Berlin-Spandau to Berlin-Bahnhof Zoo, and on this line at least, they have this on almost every main signal. And the main signals that you have at the stations there, most of the signals there have this M board, so there it is actually possible for the dispatcher to send the driver on with the verbal order and does not need to take a written order to him. In our scenario here, we don't have an M board, so we still are stuck with the written order requirement. This one, we all know, it is the combination of HP0 and SH1. We are showing the SH1, two lights ascending from left to right, or the semaphore signal equivalent together with the HP0. And we have already learned in streams before that even if the signal starts out being an HP0 signals with 2 red lights, if the SH1 is shown alongside with it, then one of the red lights goes dark. So you will see in the game on the Bremen-Oldenburg, for example, sometimes, and also on the Niddertalbahn, I think, sometimes signals that show 2 red lights with the white lights alongside with it. This is not a valid signal aspect in my opinion, and it wasn't in the 90s either. So if the SH1 light signal is shown with a red light, then it is always just one lamp that is on. The rules in the 301 directive specifically state that as soon as SH1 is shown with it, then one of the red lights goes dark. And we know that you can pass this signal, but only if you are a shunting service. Yeah, if you are a train service, you cannot pass, but only if you are a shunting service. And let's see what will happen in our scenario for that. Let's turn off the presentation a bit and let's look around. So you can see on our signal here we have those 2 lamps that can show the white lights ascending SH1 light signal. They are not on, and that is for a reason, because if the dispatcher would just show SH1 with the HP0, even if the second red light would go dark, we would be allowed to pass this signal without a written order. But what would happen then? We would go along the track, and then we get to, let's see if it actually comes, or if I already passed it. Maybe I was too fast. Maybe I was too fast. Let's go back to the station and find it, because I want to demonstrate what happens there. There should be, yeah, here it is. The Halt für Rangierfahrten, we've discussed this 2 weeks ago. If we pass the HP0 with the SH1 shown together, we must be a shunting service, otherwise it would not be it would not allow us to pass this signal. But then, being a shunting service, we would have to stop at this point here, so we wouldn't be able to actually leave the station area. So this does not make sense in our context here, when we are supposed to go on and pick up this broken down DMU further on. So it is actually a good thing that the dispatcher is not using that signal. We have discussed that sometimes in the game in Munich or in Köln main station, you get this signal as a normal train service, and this is obviously not how it is supposed to be. This combination HP0 with SH1 only allows you to pass as a shunting service, and then you are limited by the limit of shunt board and cannot pass. So what other possibilities are there? We have discussed this in one of the Bremen-Oldenburg streams. It is this, the yellow V, 3 lights, additional lights shown in a V arrangement and in yellow, typically underneath the signal. I've put it up here so that we can see it better. It is a ZS7 Vorsichtssignal, a caution signal. And again, looking back in the game, we can see that our signal here has no possibility to show this signal. Here we have 3 lights. We could think, maybe there is that, but it is the wrong arrangement. They are going in the Delta version or the A version, not in the V version. So this is not a possibility to show the Vorsichtssignal here. Back to the presentation. So what does the Vorsichtssignal actually allow? It allows us to pass the signal. We obviously need our general movement authority, our track warrant, to go on this line, but we don't need a specific order to pass the signal anymore. This signal here, this ZS7, is enough for that. And then we are required to go on site, to drive on site until the next main signal. Aufsicht bis Hauptsignal. Until the next main signal. But what does it mean? What does driving on site mean in Germany? And you can read it up on this section of the Fahrdienstrichtlinie, of Fahrdienstvorschrift. You are limited to a maximum of 40 kilometers per hour, and this means maximum. Obviously, on site means you always have to be able to stop within the part of track that you can see. And even if you can see until the horizon, you cannot go faster than those 40 kilometers per hour. And I think the other speeds that are given here are not in the directive, but they are best practice rules that I've heard on some other video YouTube channel, that at night when it is dark, this drops to 15 kilometers per hour, so driving on site in darkness should not be faster than 15 kilometers per hour. And in poor visibility, fog, night, snow, rain, whatever, you should not go faster than walking speed. And if the visibility is going worse and worse and you cannot actually see your hand in front of your eyes, then you should not go at all and call the dispatcher and say, I can't go, I can't see a thing. Yeah, but this is what we need to know. If we are supposed to go on site, we are limited to 40 kilometers per hour, notwithstanding any other limits that might encounter. And the next thing is, until the next main signal, you have to pass the next main signal with your full train before you can actually go faster again. So let's say the next signal shows you an HP1. You have a green light, you can go on. Just like with speed restrictions in general, you have to pass it with your full train and then you can accelerate. And there is an additional rule: even if your train is shorter than 400 meters, you have to go at least 400 meters past this signal until you can accelerate according to line speed after that. So that is all what comes automatically if you are allowed to pass a red signal with the caution signal that is in the game, as far as I can remember, only in the Bremen-Oldenburg, when they are showing you the Vorsichtssignal, when they are sending you into a siding. And then there is obviously no next main signal because the track ends there. Yeah, and those requirements, they come out of the Fahrdienstvorschrift. What else do we know? We have seen this in one of the videos on the Niddertalbahn, the arrangement that we have just seen in the game. Not to confuse it with the V, it is a different alignment. It is the A alignment for the Ersatzsignal, for the ZS1 replacement signal. It looks like this on some signals, and it can on more modern signals look like this. It is one flashing white light, typically underneath the red. And this Ersatzsignal is used typically if something is broken in the signal. If the track is clear, the dispatcher knows the track is clear, and he wants to switch the signal to green, and it just wouldn't switch. Yeah, so the red lamp does not go off, or the signal goes dark and the green lamp just would not show. Something does not work, signal is broken, some failure, some malfunction. Then there is the possibility of showing this replacement signal, and then the driver can pass it. I have not found any requirements whether the driver needs to be careful in a specific way then, or if he can just treat this as a normal signal. He can pass the signal at this point. The problem is the dispatcher needs to be sure that it is a good thing to allow the driver to pass this signal. There have been accidents in the past, really bad accidents, train crashes with fatalities, where a dispatcher tried to switch a signal, and then the signal box would not let him, because there were conflicting pathings, and so the signal would not be switched. It would not switch, and then the dispatcher, if the dispatcher thinks, well, I want to switch it anyway, must be a malfunction, and overrides it by showing this replacement signal, then he can send 2 trains on a head-on collision course, and this is obviously one of the most dangerous things that can happen in railroading. So the dispatcher needs to be sure that the track is clear. He has to ascertain that before he shows this Ersatzsignal. This Ersatzsignal, replacement signal, works in a flashing version as well. Then it is called a ZS8, and this is more or less the same aspect here, but it also tells the driver that he's going into the track that is reserved for the opposite direction typically. It has this version with the 3 white lights in the A formation flashing, or on more modern versions you can have this here. This is typically, if it is non-flashing, just an indicator that tells the driver that he is going into the a crossover into the track that is for the opposite direction. But if it is flashing at the same time, it allows him to pass a red signal. It comes in this alignment here, and it has one of the beautiful German words, a Gegengleisfahrt-Ersatzsignal, an opposite track replacement signal. It is a replacement signal and at the same time allows the driver to go on the opposite track against the direction of traffic. It can look like this, with the ends of this of this line being bent, but it can also come without those bends at the end. It's the same aspect, and then it allows to drive. It allows the driver to go against the direction of traffic until the next station, intersection, or crossover. So actually, until the next possibility where he could just switch back to the track that is typically reserved for his direction of travel. So those are the 6 possibilities that I have found that a driver can be allowed to pass a red signal on a light signal that has this mast sign. Again, there are some mast signs that modify those rules a bit, but this is the vast majority of main signals that we have in the game. And so I thought it was a good idea to look at the different signals that allow you to parse, and what additional requirements for what the driver needs to do after he passed this signal. One thing that applies to all of those situations typically is that most probably there will be an active 2000 Hertz magnet at this signal. So to not get a penalty break, we will have to push our Befehlstaste, the override key on the PCB equipment, so that we can pass the signal without getting a penalty break, and then you will have the Befehl 40 program. We will have to push it and hold it down until we passed the 2000 Hertz magnet. Quick question, LSJ Black. In the last one, there aren't any blinking lights on the red signal. And there aren't any blinking lights on the red signs. Well, for the light signals, you're talking about the red signs, the light signals here, right? They can have this additional. They are shown together. You have the signal showing the red light, and then you can have either this one with the A in flashing version or the other one indicator. I'm just showing it next to it because the alignment is not necessarily a requirement. Typically you would have those red signals, and underneath either this one with the 3 flashing white lights in the A formation, or that one underneath. But it can be in some situation, depending on whether there is room, it can be next to it or on top of it or in any alignment that makes sense. But typically it is underneath, like in our game. Let's switch back to the game. Here you can see, here you would have it just underneath. So these 3 lights If they are lit, just lit, not flashing, it will be the replacement signal set as 1, allowing you to pass the signal in case of a failure. And if they were flashing, then you could go into the track that is for the opposite direction. Because you can see we are sitting on this line here. There is actually not a line for the different for the opposite direction here, because there is only one line for the direction that we are going, so it would not make any sense here. Yeah, but going through all these possibilities, the only possibility that makes sense in our case here, where we would be sent to pick up this broken down train, will be the first one. We need a written order. So who is the guy who gets the written order to us? Ah, here he comes. Can always recognize him from his tie. Thank you very much for the written order. We will take this to our train. We will put it in our locomotive. We are required to put it in a place where you can see it easily. Any train orders that we have gotten. So we would probably, where would we put it? Maybe here on this stand here. We can just put it, and then even if we are relieved by a different driver, then the different driver or the next driver can see the train order and knows what to do. So we have our written order now. We can pass it, and now we stop being a regular train service, but now we are a Sperrfahrt, a train service into blocked track. As Ronnie has pointed out 2 weeks ago, it might be a bit unrealistic that we take our Sugar Beets with us when we are going into blocked track to pick up a broken down train. The sound that you heard was the override key, the Befehlstaste. Stop someone key on board, Hank. Yes, Hank is with us. We have Hank with us. And now remember, we have to go on site. Probably. I think it is on the train order that we have to go on site all the time, or maybe we can go the next 1.5 kilometers without driving on site. But since we are at the moment a pulled Sperrfahrt, we are limited to 50. Even when the track limit increases after a while, we still can't go faster than 50 as a Sperrfahrt. At the moment we are still in our 40 line speed, but you can say already out of it 50, and then it will climb to 60, and this we cannot make use of that. We will still be limited to 50. So let's say our order says we can go with 50 max. Until 500 meters in front of the place where the broken down train is. And then we have to go on site. Let's say that is what the dispatcher says in the train order. I think it is the AC, what is it, the SD70 ACE on Sherman Hill, where we had this nice place where it says train orders and the clip where we can clip them. And I remember CD Radar, you commenting on this and say we don't have any train orders. Now we have a train order, we could actually put it there. Yeah. And see, we're in a section of track where there are technically not secured level crossings. So as soon as we start being a pushed Sperrfahrt, then we will have to keep to the 20 limit. Until then, we can actually enjoy the great scenery. Hank already jumped into the car and is sitting with his Sugar Beets. So, we're getting closer to the point where we need to go on site. So we're slowing down because we can't actually see a lot of the track in front of us. Warning people that might still be with the broken down train that we're approaching. The fact that a Sperrfahrt is limited to 50 kilometers per hour also allows us to turn off the piece at B, because that is actually a thing that is in the law, in the Eisenbahn-Bau- und Betriebsordnung, that prohibits any train to go faster than 50 kilometers per hour if there is no train protection system, no safety system active. And if we keep below this 50 kilometers per hour, then it is okay to turn off the piece at B, because it obviously does not make sense to push around this broken down DMU in front of us if our train protection system is running on the locomotive. So the scenario actually turns off the PZP there completely. We can see the little bridge in front of us. The SPADing obviously still is running. And we can see the broken down DMU on this bridge. So if we had left our Sugar Beets at the station, we could use the loco brakes to slow down. But since we have them, we should better use the train brakes. Okay, and we probably would stop, alarm the people that are there, contact the dispatcher again. He says denied, no ruler. Well, I was expecting him to say, okay, you can couple up, everything is safe. So we will just do that. And then we will slowly push onto this DMU. So, yeah, they kiss. Again, we're using the screw coupling, not the shunting coupling. Again, dispatcher, can we go? Yes, we can. And we're going to Büdesheim. And now, since we are a pushed shunting service, even if we position Hank on the tip in the cap of the push train, since we are pushing the vehicles as a Sperrfahrt on a piece of track where there are level crossings that are not technically secured, we should be limited to 20. And we can run without PCB on. Again, good thing that we can see the speed clock through the window. The driver ran away, the driver that was connected with this broken down train. Yeah, obviously he ran away. But you're right. He should be still with his vehicle, right? Isn't there a rule, like with captains of ships, that drivers don't leave their train? In case of need. So probably Hank is just chilling with this other driver and the other driver is giving us the directions. There is one of the technically not secured level crossings, why we are limited to 20 kilometers per hour. I'm just using the horn excessively now, because this is an unusual situation. We are passing the semaphore version of the VR2. Disc plus arrow in 45 degrees, telling us we have to slow down to 40 at the next main signal, what is obviously not bugging us since we are limited to the 20 as the pushed Sperrfahrt on a track with technically not secured level crossings. Have to press the CFA pedal or button every now and then so that we do not get stopped by the CFA, because we probably don't hear the alarm as long as we are sharing Hank's view from the DMU cap. Up front you can see the HP2 semaphore signal. From that point on we are limited to 40. Again, we are limited to 20 because we are a pulled Sperrfahrt on tracks with technically not secured level crossings. So the signaled speed reduction to 40 does not mean anything for us here. Good thing is we can still go on. Because the HP2 signal conveys a movement authority to pass the signal. AJ, you can see the 3 lights on this sign again, right? Underneath the signal. Tunnel. After the tunnel there will be Büdesheim station, where we are supposed to stop. Don't worry, Hank is still okay. He did not get kicked out of his position. Just the camera does not want to fit into the tunnel. Did I not turn on the instrument lights yet? Oh! I apologize, I did not want to yank in the emergency brakes. Sometimes this happens when you're using the keyboards and you keep your finger on it for too long. Is Hank in his position? No, he isn't. Now he's back. Again, some recap from the video about the Gruppenausfahrsignale, because we are here at the station where the Gruppenausfahrsignale are valid again. We have only one signal for both tracks. 3 tracks here, although the shunting track on the right side, the siding, has a Sperrsignal at least. The other 2 have this Fahrtanzeiger. It is not on because the signal will be showing a red light. We will have to stop at the NE5 board, the stop marker that shows the H. You can already see it. And this is modeled correctly. As soon as any part of the train passes this, we will spad out. We will not spad out at the signal, but we would spad out at the Haltesignal, the Haltetafel. But we will have to go a bit further because the scenario wants us to. No. Yeah, that's better. Alright, Hank, you can uncouple the 2 vehicles, the DMU. And now we are back at the station. We stop being a Sperrfahrt, a service on block track. And since we are supposed to pick up those 3 cars with Sugar Beets, and for that we need to go back and forth across the tracks, we are now a shunting service again. We are not a train service anymore, we are a shunting service. What is important, for one interesting thing, because now we are going backwards. At least I hope we do. No, we're not, because I did not manage to set the reverser. Now we see it. Light is on. Release the brakes again. And apply some throttle. And then we are going backwards. Where are you, Hank? Here you are. Now the Fahrtanzeiger is on, even though the signal is showing HP0. And we have been discussing this 2 or 3 weeks ago when we have played this scenario for the first time, that we are actually allowed to pass the red signal now for some reason. At least we're not SPADing out, even if Hank sitting with the Sugar Beets here at the rear end of the train is just happily passing this red signal showing HP 0. Horizontal blade. And no Ersatzsignal is on, no replacement signal is on. We're just passing it and nobody complains. And since Alistair Lynn's comment, I can tell you that this is actually correct. We can pass this signal because we are a shunting service. And for that, I want to go back to the presentation once more and tell you why it is like this. It is a historical thing. Before November the 8th, 1995, in the West, that means in the area that was governed by the DS-301, the Western German signal book, we had not only the HP 0 signal with a semaphore, horizontal blade at night, one red light, the second blade pointing to the top or not even being there, and on the light signal the corresponding thing with one red lamp on. And at the same time we already had the Sperrsignale, the blocking signals, the shunting signals as we call them sometimes, SH0. You must not pass this track here. And interestingly enough, this signal here that we have always called an HP0 signal was called until then an SH0 dwarf signal. So this was not a main signal at that time, but it was actually a Sperrsignal, SH0. It was the corresponding thing, the light signal to that one here. And this signal, HP0, only one red lamp, and the corresponding semaphore signal obviously did not allow any train service to pass, but it was not applicable for shunting services. And this is the interesting bit of news that I had forgotten when we played this 2 weeks ago, when Alistair Lynn mentioned it and I read up in the sources. I actually remembered that there was a thing like this before 1995, and we are set in 1992. So the single red lamp signal and the corresponding semaphore signal that always only has one red lamp, the HP0 signal, was not valid for shunting services. This is why in our scenario we are actually allowed to pass this semaphore signal that is showing HP0, because now we stopped being a train service and we are a shunting service again. So in this context we can pass it with our little shunting service. If we want to prohibit a shunting service to move on, we would have to show an SH0 signal with it. So this signal, the little ones, the dwarf ones, would actually stop both train services and shunting services. To have a mainline signal that also stops shunting services, not only train services, this aspect was used on light signals, but only on light signals. There is no corresponding semaphore signal for that. And this is where the two red lamps come into play. So not only the one red lamp that we had on the semaphore signals all the time, but on the light signals being able to show two red lamps, like the old SH0 signal here. This kind of signal, then named HP00, this is obviously not short for a restroom, but for this kind of signal that has two red lamps. as compared to this signal that has only one red lamp. It means stop for train services and also for shunting services. So this signal aspect here, two red lamps, used to be a specific signaling aspect that did not only block train services, but as a combination more or less of HP0 and SH0 stopped both train services and shunting services. What always worked even then was the combination of HP0 and SH1 that allowed shunting services to proceed at this point. So if you only had the HP0 as a shunting service, you can just pass it before November the 8th, 1995. If you wanted to have a semaphore signal that was also able to stop shunting services, you would have an additional dwarf signal with it, Sperrsignal, so that you can actually show the SH0 together with the HP0. Then you would block train services as well as shunting services. And if you want to let shunting services pass, then you would just switch the dwarf signal to SH1, and then the shunting service can go on, but no train can go on, and the shunting service will have to stop at the shunting limit board. So this was the array of signals that we had in the West before November the 8th, 1995. In the East, they had a different solution. They did not have the HP00 signal. They were using the HP0 signal, the one red lamp, that actually stopped both train services and shunting services, but they had a special mast sign that they can put on main signals, and it looked a bit like the rhomboid board, the diamond board that announces the level crossing supervision signals in this DLC here, but with 6 diamonds instead of 4 diamonds, and replacing this white over red over white mast sign, and indicating that even if the signal is showing a red lamp, a shunting service can pass this signal. And that was the situation in the East at the time. When the two systems were more or less united, there was a situation, I think it was until December 14th in 2008, I put it into brackets latest, because this is when the Directive 301 as such was published, and at least at this time we had a situation, or after 1995 until this point, where the HP00 signal no longer existed, and it was moved to this line here. So at this point, 1995 to 2008, we had the 2 red lamps on the main signals requalified as an HP0 signal, and at the same time put it into the rules that this signal, and regardless whether it has 1 red lamp or 2 red lamps, also stops shunting services. So 3 years after the time that our DLC is set in, we would no longer be able to pass this this semaphore HP0 signal with our shunting service, because then it would be also a stop signal for a shunting service. But because we are 3 years prior to that point, we still can do it. Yeah, so they unified this a bit, and they got rid of the HP00 signal, and the other stuff still worked, and also the double red was still an SH0 signal. And after that point, since December 14th, 2008, when the Directive 301 got into force, then this signal here also was requalified as an HP0 signal and no longer as an SH0 signal. And if you think back 2 weeks ago when we discussed the shunting signals, we have this slight disparity, that there is no light signal for the SH0 signal anymore, because this one was requalified as an HP0 signal. And since then, all those red signals are HP0 signals, and they stop train services as well as shunting services. What still works is the HP0s with the SH1, allowing shunting services to proceed. But at that time, we can only have one red lamp on the signal. And obviously the SH0 as a semaphore signal still exists and stops both. And this is the situation that we have now. But going back to this situation here in the game, we have a simple HP0 signal on the semaphore signal, and this is not valid for us as a shunting service. So the game is totally right when we can just go on at this point. So, going into different direction, switching to forward, releasing the brakes, applying some throttle. You can see the switch indicator is sending us to the left track here. Now we're passing the signal from behind. From behind it does not have any relevance for us anyway. The little white disc that we can see is a TS signal, by the way. But that is of no importance and a different story. We can see again that the Fahrtanzeiger here is lit. What it typically is on the track that allows to be passed. And what I wanted to demonstrate again is that the Gruppenausfahrsignal, the group exit signal after the switch, is still at HP0, at a red. And since we are still a shunting service, we are still allowed to pass it. What we can also see is the SH0 signal here, the Sperrsignal, blocking signal that prohibits trains coming from out of this siding here to go onto the main route. And here is the main signal showing HP0, red light. And since we are a shunting service, we can pass it without SPADing out. So would we be good just to proceed until we get to the next station, maybe? Go out onto the line, since we have passed the signal and we were allowed to pass the signal? No, obviously not. Because since we are a shunting service, we have the limit of shunt sign here that we need to respect. And this is how I want to end this scenario here. I want to demonstrate, and I hope the game did that, if we pass this signal here, then we are SPADing out. Let's see if we're SPADing out. Yes! Good work, TSG. At this point, good job. So, I hope this was not too confusing today with all the old history about the German HP0 red signals and how we can pass them nowadays. I thought this was worth it to go back to this after the very valuable comments that Alistair Lynn left under our last video where we played this. Next week I want to start with discussing the hydrokinetic drives, that the hydrokinetic turbo transmissions that we have on many DMUs and shunting locomotives. A very interesting technology, and we had it on this locomotive here. We also have it on the 628. We have it on the brand new class 158 in the Midland DLC that was released recently. Also on the 166 DMU on the Great Western Railway, on the Baureihe 612 on the Taranto Rampe. And this is a technology that is not totally intuitive, I think, and it is worth looking into it. So thank you for today, for bearing with me and going through the history of red signals in Germany. Thank you, AJ, for moderating this. Thank you, CD Radar, for your input again, and I hope we see each other next Sunday. Have a nice week. Take care. Goodbye.